Alright, so this is part two on the Amy Guyger testimonial as she's being cross-examined by the prosecutor.
So this is the door, 1478, right?
Yes, sir.
With me?
Yes.
It opens to the left, just like this, right?
Yes.
All right, so you're saying that you're standing inside, somewhere here around the door, and you see him coming from the very back, coming right at you.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so it's going to be in that main corridor, like if you compare it to your apartment, where your little baker's rack and your clock is, that main hallway, right?
Yes. Explain it again, please.
Okay, so are you talking about the main pathway in that particular apartment, where from the door you can see all the way back to the end of 1478?
Yes.
Okay, so it's in that main pathway.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, at no time is she talking about a silhouette or anything. I don't know about you, but if I can see all the way through somebody's apartment through a corridor, I think I would probably be able to see somebody's hands.
Take a normal shooting position. You have a one-handed shooting position, correct? All right. Mr. Jean is a good 4 inches taller than me. In order for that bullet to have gone into him at that angle, he must have been bent over something like this, right?
I don't know what he was.
If you saw the trajectory that the medical examiner testified to, do you have any reason to think that the medical examiner is lying?
I don't.
So your testimony is that he was standing straight up, looking you in the eye, or looking right at you when you shot him in the chest.
Yes, sir. When I saw him, it's the last thing I saw.
Okay, so here's a problem. So if the medical examiner has now said that that bullet did not go into his body as if he was standing straight up and down, then that sounds like to me that he was in a cowardice type position or taking cover because he saw her probably pointing a gun at him, and she still chose to shoot and kill him. Dude, that's intent to kill. Now we're hovering towards murder. Certainly manslaughter, but it's about to get dialed up. This is when it's not an accident. This is when you're supposed to be able to have details to say, look, this is not a confrontational situation. He is not charging you. He is not being an imminent threat. Your life is not in danger, clearly. So he didn't elaborate on this whole autopsy and how the bullets entered the body. I'd imagine he's going to come up with that later as laying down a foundation now. But once a medical examiner comes up on examination, then that's when these details will probably come out and really be a noose around her neck, hopefully. But that was crucial.
So you were looking at me right in the eye when you shot him in the heart?
I wouldn't say his eye. I was looking at the person that was standing in front of me.
Okay, and you're trained. Not only did you do a double tap, again relying on your training, but you shot him exactly where you as a police officer are trained to aim, didn't you?
Yes, that's why we're trained.
Where are you trained to shoot a human being?
Rephrase that?
Where are you trained to shoot a human being?
In the center mass.
That's right. And you train repeatedly when you qualify to shoot at an individual center mass if you wish to stop them.
Yes, sir.
All right, and you know what a bullet is, don't you?
I do.
So you knew when you were shooting that gun that you were using deadly force against Mr. Jean.
Yes, it was a threat at the time.
Ma'am, will you answer my questions, please?
Yes, sir.
When you shot at Mr. Jean, you knew you were using deadly force against him.
Yes.
You know what a bullet can do, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And when you shot at him twice, you intended to kill him.
Yes, sir.
All right. So all this stuff about it being a sad mistake, at the moment in time when rubber meets the road, when you pulled that trigger, you intended to kill Mr. Jean.
He was the threat. Yes, sir.
Will you answer my question? When you aimed and pulled the trigger at Mr. Jean, shooting him in center mass exactly where you are trained, you intended to kill Mr. Jean.
I did.
Here, and I missed when she was talking about shooting Mr. John, this is when the prosecutor uncovers the fact that there is a bullet hole that is not accounted for in her storyline in his apartment, which further gives an indication that she opens that door and she just starts randomly shooting at somebody she thinks is a perpetrator.
So you've indicated this was where Mr. John was standing then, and the front door where you were standing was right in front.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's when you shot him twice.
Yes, sir.
And when Mr. Shook came walking up, this was the position he was standing in when you confirmed that that's when you shot him.
He came at me saying he was standing in that position, yes.
That's true. And I did not mention that, and I thank you for clarifying that. One of the things that happened in the walk from 30 feet up to here was that Mr. John said, hey, hey, right?
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes, sir.
You don't fault him for that, do you?
Not now.
No, it's his apartment.
I know that now.
Yeah. And so when you shot him, you indicated with Mr. Shook was standing right here, and that's where you shot him twice, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, and this was the position Mr. Shook was standing, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you give us then some sort of an explanation that would satisfy the jury how then you have a bullet hole that's over in the rightmost corner of the apartment over there if this is where he's standing?
That I cannot explain.
Wow, that's interesting.
Expert
It's
in
just
that.
physically impossible, isn't it?
I don't know that for sure.
Okay. Can you explain to me, you saw the medical examiner, right? You saw his testimony about the path of the bullet?
I did.
All right, so that would have indicated, stand up again. Watch your step, please. Take a normal shooting position. You have a one-handed shooting position, correct? All right. Mr. John is a good 4 inches taller than me. In order for that bullet to have gone into him at that angle, he must have been bent over something like this, right?
I don't know what he was.
If you saw the trajectory that the medical examiner testified to, do you have any reason to think that the medical examiner is lying?
I don't.
But so your testimony is that he was standing straight up, looking you in the eye, or looking right at you when you shot him in the chest.
Yes, sir. When I saw him, it's the last thing I saw.
So you were looking that man right in the eye when you shot him in the heart?
I wouldn't say his eye. I was looking at.
Prosecutor would never repeat
person that
that
was
if he's
standing
not
in
looking
front
to
of me.
hang you later
Your
on.
training, not only did you do a double tap, again relying on your training, but you shot him exactly where you as a police officer are trained to aim, didn't you?
Yes, that's why we're trained.
Were you trained to shoot a human being?
Rephrase that.
Where are you trained to shoot a human being?
In the center mass.
You're not fully in the apartment and you're not fully in the hallway. You're right in the middle, right?
Yes, sir.
You understand that neighbors say that they can, all the neighbors that testified along that hall who are closest to Mr. John,
Yes.
the people that live, I mean, the ones that we call those witnesses are the ones who live across from him, next door to him, the closest as we could find possible of 300 people that live there, right?
Yes, sir.
Not one of them heard you say that.
I can't tell you why.
Now, mind you, in the testimonial earlier, you heard that she heard the cops' radios and stuff like that in the hallway because it echoed. Now, she's inside the unit. They're further away. She heard them, and they weren't even shouting. She's claiming she shouted, "Show me your hands." And nobody on the other side of the walls or the adjacent units across the way heard her shout. Especially if she's shouting and she's so scared and everything. Something's wrong.
It's because you didn't say it.
Not true, sir.
I want to talk to you now about the decision before you actually went in. So, again, I want to go over what you told Mr. Shook, okay? You said, and I'm going to use this again as the door to 1478, all right? You said it was slightly ajar and that you noticed that, right?
Yes, sir.
And you said that you put the key in with your right hand. You noticed the red light blinking, didn't you?
No, I did not.
Okay. But when you did that,
Right now is about to get into all the details about all the options she had before going into that unit, understanding that maybe something might be wrong. What are all the things that she could have done instead of reaching for her sidearm in order to take a life? So listen to the details, but that's what he's pointing out. This is the foundation.
the door, even though it's weighted and it's going to close on its own, pushed open a little bit, didn't you?
force of me putting the key in opened it.
Okay, so that force, but you said that just from that small amount of force that you put just to put the key in and the door opening a little bit, you could hear movement inside, like shuffling or moving around.
Yes.
Okay. And then you said you made the decision at that point, from that perspective, I wanted, as the door began to open, I was wanting to find the threat.
Yes, there was someone in my apartment.
Right. And you knew that before this door had been fully open. You wanted to find the threat and fully open that door, and that's when you saw Mr. John.
No,
True?
sir. No, sir. It happened so quickly.
You said,
See, this is what women usually do. They always act like this when they're on the hot seat. All the murderers that I've ever seen, they always respond this way. Oh my God, it happened so fast. Because they're usually trying to claim that there was some type of spousal abuse. So the husband or whoever the assailant was came at them and they had no time to think. They were only just so vulnerable mentally and they had no choice but to act the way they did, which was in fact kill somebody. So this is the act that they do. They always drop their octave in their voice so low, so they're so unaudible almost. And here comes the excuse. However, now he's about to establish that with all your police training and you're so scared, then why would you charge in and act like Rambo or Bruce Willis to go in there blazing? If you're so frightened, then why wouldn't you take cover, call for help? Do something other than put yourself in harm's way. You don't know if there's more than one person in there. Nothing like that. But you still chose to go in a room that you could claim that you barely could see in, knowing that there is a threat, to try to neutralize it.
put the key in, and I hear moving around. As the door began to open, I wanted to find the threat. As the door was opened fully, that's when you saw the silhouette.
Yes, sir.
So you knew from outside that door, with the protection of that door between you, that there was something inside that was making noise.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So here were your options then. Your options were, at this point, to go in and find the threat, or your option would have been, I'm going to back off, I'm going to take a position of cover and concealment, and I'm going to get some help out here. Those are options, right?
And they are.
Okay. But you chose option A, which was I'm going in to find the threat.
That was the only option that went through my head. I was at home, and
Ma'am, will you answer my questions?
Yes, sir.
You chose to go in and find the threat, even though you were in a position to have taken cover and concealment, right?
No, sir.
Your training, which you've told this jury several times now, that you revert to. You've told them that, right?
Yes, I have.
You rely on that training, is what you've said.
Yes, I do.
That's why you pulled the gun when you pulled the gun, right?
Yes, sir.
That's why you keep your right hand empty.
Yes, sir.
That's why you backed your truck in, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because that's what police do, right?
Yes, sir.
But you're telling me at the most critical moment of the entire thing, your training just abandoned you.
No, sir.
No. Because your training says that when you're at this point here, for officer safety, to maximize your safety, do not go inside that apartment.
On a call.
Ma'am, your general orders indicate that you are on duty 24/7.
They do.
And you know that that training is designed for your safety, first and foremost.
See, this is what happens
Yes,
when
sir.
you get caught
That's
cherry
not only
picking.
what your orders are. That's how you guys are trained.
Yes, sir.
So for your safety, you should have taken a position of cover and concealment and got help. And instead you decided to go in.
Yes, I did go in.
You had a police radio on you, didn't you?
I did.
Did it work?
It did.
You live 2 blocks away from police headquarters.
Yes, sir.
You know that when you call out as a police officer, the number one thing for every other police officer is to come and help you if you say that you need help.
Yes, sir.
You know that the response time on this call was about 2 minutes, and bodies were at the apartment.
Yes, sir.
So you could have taken a position of cover and concealment. You could have called for help on your radio, and you could have had the cavalry there in 2 minutes.
I could have.
You could have had SWAT mobilized.
They could have.
You could have had K-9 mobilized.
They could have also.
Right. And had you done any one of those things, Mr. Jean would probably be alive today. Right?
Yes, sir.
Nevertheless, you wanted to go in and find the threat.
Now that argument, I always say, can be used on every single unarmed shooting that we've almost ever seen. Nobody opts to use any pepper spray, K9, other units, no other kind of tactic whatsoever. It's always, let me draw my weapon and shoot. And this is the reason why it's a problem. It's like they don't have a utility belt of other solutions. And here's the prosecutor. Now, prosecutors are the ones that are supposed to be putting these cops away. So the thing is, why aren't these questions being asked in every single shooting? But apparently, we keep skipping it, shoving it under the rug, and saying, oh, well, this is the way our protocol is. Well, clearly a prosecutor represents the state. So clearly he knows what the protocol is of an officer. And these are the same questions he's using to convict an officer. And I am just saying, they should be used in every single one of these killings. When Eric was killed, were there other options other than putting him in a chokehold? Yes. The list just goes on. Sterling. Hey, everybody.
In court today, you've been somewhat soft-spoken, but I know as a police officer, you have an outside voice, don't you?
I do.
All right. So when you say and you give loud verbal commands, your loud verbal commands weren't like you told this jury today, were they?
They weren't loud. I told him to let me see your hands, let me see your hands.
Okay. Why don't you really tell them how a police officer gives loud verbal commands when they really want them?
She never does it. See, she won't say it as loud as she claims that she said because there's no witnesses that can verify that she said it. So she has to say it low. So now she's caught in the catch-22.
When it really matters, how do you give a loud verbal command?
In an authoritative and clear voice.
You would have said, let me see your hands!
Yep.
Let me see your hands! Right?
It would be a loud voice, yes.
Now see, neighbors would have heard that.
You would have been almost screaming that at him, wouldn't you?
I didn't scream it.
All right.
Why wouldn't you if you're so frightened?
That happened at the threshold of the door with the door open, right?
In
Yes,
a
sir.
hallway.
So you're actually partially in the hallway.
Yes, I guess you can say that.
What do you mean you
You're
guess?
not fully in the apartment and you're not fully in the hallway. You're right in the middle, right?
Yes, sir.
You understand that
Your
neighbors
feet can feel the little
say
metal
all
thingy.
the neighbors that testified along that hall who are closest to Mr. Jean,
Yes.
the people that live, the ones that we call those witnesses are the ones who live across from him, next door to him, the closest as we could find possible of 3 other people that live there, right?
Yes, sir.
And one of them heard you say that.
I can't tell you why.
Well, it's because you didn't say it.
Not true, sir.
There it is.